You're standing at the altar, about to say I do. The music plays. The guests are silent. The moment is perfect. But then a stray dog walks down the aisle, uninvited, unexpected, and unstoppable. What happens next? It leaves the entire wedding in tears. Weddings are usually full of planned details, floral arrangements, timing, who walks when, and what song plays at the kiss. But no one, absolutely no one, could have prepared for what happened at this wedding. Not the bride, not the groom, not the priest, and definitely not the stray dog who wandered in, stopped the ceremony, and changed everything. This is a true story, and by the end, you'll understand why people are calling this moment a miracle. It was one of those mornings you remember for the rest of your life. Not because something went wrong, but because everything felt like it was falling perfectly into place. A soft Oregon sun had risen early, casting golden streaks of light across the sleepy town of Clearwater Grove. The town square smelled of freshly cut grass and roses, the kind that grew wildly around the edges of gardens this time of year. It was a Saturday, the kind of Saturday where time feels slower, people smile more often, and life feels lighter. In the heart of this picturesque town stood St. Mary's Chapel, a modest but beautiful little church, with ivy climbing its stone walls and stained glass windows that glowed like jewels when sunlight hit them just right. The chapel was filled with joy that morning, not just because of the wedding, but because of who was getting married, Anna. Everyone in town knew Anna, either because they'd watched her grow up, taught her in school, or had their hair done at the salon where her mother worked. She was kind, soft-spoken, and never one to seek attention. The kind of girl who remembered your birthday and showed up with soup when you were sick. And David, her groom, had moved to town just 4 years ago, but quickly became one of Clearwater Grove's favorite people. A local carpenter with a love for animals and an infectious laugh. He was the sort of man who fixed fences for free and waved at everyone from his truck. Their love story wasn't flashy. It wasn't built on drama or spectacle. It was built on coffee dates, long walks, shared books, and quiet understanding. When they got engaged, the whole town seemed to cheer. It felt right. The wedding day had finally arrived. White chairs lined the open-air garden behind the chapel. Soft petals sprinkled the aisle. Light music floated through the breeze. Live violin, played by Anna's cousin Clara. Nothing too dramatic, just delicate notes that curled around the moment like ribbons. Anna stood behind the double doors, her hands holding a small bouquet of wildflowers and peonies. Her dress was simple but elegant. No beads or crystals, just lace and fabric that flowed like water. Her hair was loosely pinned, a few strands falling naturally around her cheeks. She didn't wear much makeup. She didn't need to. Her glow came from within as the doors opened and she stepped forward. Every person in that garden seemed to inhale at once. The air shifted. It wasn't just that she looked beautiful. It was that she looked peaceful, completely, wholly, joyfully at peace. The walk to the altar felt like a dream. Her father held her arm, his grip a little tighter than normal, as if this was the moment he'd both dreaded and prayed for since the day she was born. David waited at the end of the aisle, tears in his eyes before she even reached him. His fingers trembled as he reached for hers. Their eyes locked, and the world seemed to hush around them. Behind them stood Father Joseph, gentle, wise, and nearing 80. This was to be his final wedding before retiring after nearly 5 decades of service. He had baptized Anna as a baby. He had officiated her grandparents' funerals, and now he would join her and David in marriage. The moment was sacred, the silence was golden, and then it happened. A rustle, a whisper, a shift in the air so slight, you could have missed it if you weren't paying attention. But they were paying attention, because from the very back, beyond the seated guests, beyond the floral arch and the trimmed hedges, came movement. Slow, intentional, steady. A figure emerged from behind the last row of chairs, padding across the grass, with quiet steps. At first, most people didn't notice, but the ones who did turned to look, first with curiosity, then confusion. It wasn't a guest. It wasn't a late arrival. It wasn't a child running in from the church's side hall. It was a dog, but not the cute ring-bearer type of dog. Not a tuxedo-wearing retriever or a tiny pup in a stroller. This was a stray. His coat was tangled. Patches of fur were missing. Dirt clung to his legs. He looked like he hadn't eaten a real meal in weeks. His ribs were faintly visible. His tail hung low, but not in fear, just fatigue. His eyes, though tired, were bright, alert, and they were locked on Anna. No leash, no collar, no sign of an owner. Gasps rose among the guests, soft at first. One person whispered, "Is this part of the wedding?" Another chuckled awkwardly. Maybe it's a rescue dog moment or something. But no one moved. not even Anna. The violinist stopped playing. The birds even seemed to hush. The dog kept walking, step by step, down the white-petaled aisle, between the rows of guests, past the front row, where Anna's mother clutched her chest, unsure whether to laugh or scream. And then, as if drawn by some invisible thread, the dog stopped, right in front of the bride, and sat down, not sideways, not curled up. He sat tall, proud even, staring straight into Anna's eyes. Anna didn't move. Her bouquet lowered slightly, her breath caught in her throat. David looked around, half expecting someone to jump in. A handler, an explanation, anything, but there was only silence. The priest looked puzzled, but didn't speak. And still the dog sat. What was happening? A few people took photos, unsure whether this was part of the moment or the strangest wedding crash they'd ever seen. But to Anna, it wasn't strange. It wasn't random. It felt familiar. That's when her hands began to shake. Not from nerves, but from something else. Recognition. A flicker of memory danced across her face. The scar above the dog's left eye. The slightly turned-in paw. The way he tilted his head when looking at her, as if trying to understand what she was feeling. She whispered a name. Max. David leaned in. What? Her voice was firmer now. Max. The name hung in the air. The dog didn't flinch. He didn't move, but he wagged his tail once. Slow, measured, like he knew. Anna knelt slowly, dropping her bouquet. Tears were already forming in her eyes. She reached a trembling hand toward the dog's face. He didn't pull away. He leaned into her palm, eyes soft, steady, full of something unexplainable. And then, Anna broke. She fell forward, arms around the dog's neck, sobbing into his fur. Her dress crumpled beneath her. The lace touched dirt, but she didn't care. Max, she whispered again. You came back. Gasps and murmurs erupted across the garden. Some guests cried openly. Others covered their mouths in disbelief, because they remembered Max. They remembered the lost posters 5 years ago, the search parties, the heartbreak. Max had been Anna's dog since childhood, her companion through her teenage years, her shadow, her protector. One winter night, he had slipped out of the backyard during a snowstorm. No one could find him. No tracks, no clues. Weeks turned into months. The hope faded. Everyone assumed the worst, but now here he was, standing at her wedding, as if he'd been waiting for this moment, as if he knew. David stood in stunned silence, unsure what to say, but something in his eyes had shifted. He saw it too, the impossible, the miracle. Anna looked up, wiping her tears. I don't know how, but it's him. I swear it's him. Her mother stepped forward from the front row, falling to her knees beside them. Oh my God, she whispered, reaching for the same scar above his eye. It is Max. Guests were crying now. The priest removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. Still, the dog didn't move. He simply stayed at her side, calm, content, like he had finally made it home. And for the first time that day, the bride forgot about the dress, the ceremony, the flowers. She was just a girl, reunited with her best friend. The rest could wait. The moment felt frozen in time. Anna didn't move. David didn't either. The entire wedding party, every bridesmaid, every groomsman, every guest, sat in complete silence, unsure what they were witnessing. Even Father Joseph lowered his book and blinked, confused but not alarmed. It wasn't fear in the air, it was something else. Curiosity, suspense, and beneath it all, something neither Anna nor David could explain. A strange calm. The dog was still. It looked up at Anna with wide, tired eyes. Not begging, not scared, just looking. Anna slowly knelt down, careful not to startle it. The lace of her gown brushed the grass as she bent at the knees, bringing her face level with the animal. Her heart raced, not with panic, not even with confusion. It was something deeper, like her soul had recognized something before her mind had a chance to understand. Hi, she whispered. The dog didn't back away. Its ears twitched slightly, and its tail gave a slow, low wag, barely noticeable unless you were really watching. Anna saw it. So did David, and so did Father Joseph, who took a careful step forward, then stopped himself. Something in his years of wisdom told him not to interfere. No one spoke, not even the violinist, who had lowered his bow sometime during the dog's walk, and now just stared with the rest of the crowd. Anna extended a hand, and the dog gently nudged his nose against her palm. He was cold, not freezing, but not warm either, and he was thin, dangerously so. His ribs were clearly defined, his fur was matted with clumps of mud, and a faint scar ran across his front left leg. Yet despite all that, he carried himself with dignity, grace even, like he had come here with a purpose. And that was what made everyone feel so strange, because this didn't feel like an accident. The dog hadn't wandered in confused or frightened. He hadn't barked, hadn't darted from person to person like a lost puppy looking for help. He had walked directly down the aisle, as if he knew where he was going. Anna looked into his eyes, and something clicked. She didn't know what it was, and wouldn't be able to explain it even if she tried. But in that moment, she felt something shift inside her chest, like a curtain being drawn open just a little. "I think," she said softly, turning to David. "I think he needs something." David took a slow breath. "I think he chose you." The words gave Anna goosebumps. She didn't say anything. Instead, she turned her attention back to the dog, who had now laid down right at her feet, not in a rushed, panicked sprawl, but in a quiet, trusting curl, like he had reached a final destination. The crowd remained silent. A few guests had tears in their eyes and weren't sure why. One of the bridesmaids, Jenny, Anna's childhood best friend, whispered to another, "It's like he knew her." "Is it possible?" Someone else whispered. "Could it be a sign?" A sign of what? Nobody knew, but the word clung to the air like mist. Eventually, Father Joseph cleared his throat gently, not to rush, but to offer a way forward. "Should we?" Anna nodded slowly and stood back up. "Let him stay," she said quietly. "He can stay right here." The dog didn't move. He remained curled at her feet, his head resting on the hem of her dress. And so, the ceremony resumed, but it didn't feel the same. It felt deeper. When Father Joseph began again, his voice trembled slightly, not from nerves, but emotion. "We are gathered here today, in the presence of friends, family, and apparently, a very special guest." That got a soft ripple of laughter through the crowd, but no one forgot the heaviness in the air, or the stillness of the dog at Anna's feet. When Anna and David exchanged vows, she glanced down between her lines, and the dog looked back up at her with those same, unwavering eyes, as if he was listening, as if he understood every word. After they were pronounced husband and wife, the applause was gentle, almost reverent. People cheered, but no one shouted. They had all felt something unexplainable, and no one wanted to break the spell. But the strangest part was still to come. As the ceremony ended and the guests stood, the dog rose too. He didn't run. He didn't bark. He simply walked beside Anna and David as they made their way back up the aisle, like a best man or a guardian. And then he stopped, right at the edge of the ceremony space, where the grass turned to gravel. He paused and looked up one last time. Then he turned and walked away. No hesitation, no panic, just gone. Anna's breath caught in her throat. She looked at David. "Wait, should we follow him?" David looked just as stunned. I don't know." Several guests began murmuring again. A few had tears in their eyes. One woman whispered, "He came to bless them." "I swear he did." But Anna couldn't just let it go. "I need to know where he came from," she said. David nodded. "Let's find out." That's when things started to change. Anna and David, still in full wedding attire, walked past the archway, down the gravel path, and out toward the street, trying to follow the direction the dog had taken. A few curious guests joined them, but the dog had vanished. They searched for over an hour, down streets, into alleyways, even checked with local shelters. Nothing. It was as if he had never existed. But Anna knew what she saw. So did David, and so did everyone who was there that day. And that's when they began digging. It had been 4 days since the wedding, and yet neither Anna nor David could shake the feeling that something was unfinished. The dog, whom they had started calling Chapel, had become a constant in their lives. They had taken him to the vet, cleaned him up, and made sure he had a warm bed and full meals. But Chapel didn't act like a typical dog. He didn't bark. He didn't beg. He never even touched the couch or jumped onto the bed. It was like he had been trained to stay invisible, like he didn't believe he deserved attention. But that wasn't what kept Anna up at night. It was his eyes. Every time she looked into them, she felt like they were trying to tell her something. Something sad, something deep, something that mattered. One night, David came home from work holding a small stack of papers and said, "You're not going to believe what I found." He had printed out missing pet flyers, old ones, from shelters all across Oregon. One in particular made Anna's heart skip. There, blurry and weather-worn, was a photo of a dog that looked almost identical to Chapel. It was a listing from nearly 5 years ago. The name listed was Charlie. It had been posted by a man named Marcus Ellis, who lived 3 towns over. The message was short and desperate. "My dog went missing the day after my wife passed away. Please, if anyone finds him, contact me. He's all I have left." Anna and David sat in silence for a moment, just staring at the screen. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The very next morning, they called the number from a flyer. No answer. They tried again. Still nothing. Later that afternoon, they decided to drive out to the address listed. It was about an hour away. A sleepy neighborhood with trees that arched over the road like a tunnel. The house was small, worn down, the paint on the fence was peeling, and the grass had grown too high. There was a faded American flag in the window, and a mailbox so rusted it leaned to one side. David parked. Anna sat with her hand on Chapel's head. "This is it," she whispered. "This is where he's from." When they knocked, no one answered. But just as they were about to leave, an old man appeared from the side of the house. He walked with a limp, his back slightly hunched. His eyes were tired. "Can I help you?" Anna hesitated. "Are you Marcus?" He nodded slowly, suspicious but polite. We think we might have found your dog," David said, stepping forward. "We saw the flyer you posted a few years ago. Is this Charlie?" Anna opened the car door. Chapel stepped out, and everything stopped. The man's face changed. Like all the years he had aged suddenly reversed. His hands began to tremble. His lips parted, but no words came out. "Charlie," he whispered, barely audible. Chapel's ears perked. He looked at the man for a long moment, and then slowly, he stepped forward, step by step, like he had walked down the aisle. And then, he stopped in front of the man, and sat down. The man fell to his knees. He wrapped his arms around the dog, and buried his face in his fur. He sobbed, not like someone crying quietly, but the kind of crying that comes from a place you thought had gone numb. Anna and David looked at each other, and said nothing. They didn't need to. Marcus stayed on his knees, for what felt like a lifetime. Charlie, remained still, letting the man hold him, his tail softly wagging, not wildly like dogs do when they're hyper, but gently, like he too remembered. The sound of Marcus crying wasn't something Anna or David would ever forget. It wasn't just grief. It was years of guilt, loss, and hopelessness unraveling all at once. Marcus finally spoke without looking up, still hugging the dog, like he might vanish again. "I thought he was gone forever. I thought he left me because he blamed me." "Blamed you?" David asked, stepping closer. Marcus wiped his eyes. "My wife, she was sick for a long time. Cancer. Charlie never left her side, not even once. Not when she was in pain, not even when she lost her hair. He'd sleep under her bed, sit next to her wheelchair, lick her hand every morning. He only ever left the room to eat." He exhaled shakily. "After she passed, Charlie laid in her spot on the bed. He didn't eat for 2 days. Then one night, he just left. Door was shut, but he was gone the next morning, like he disappeared." Anna crouched down beside him. "You think he was grieving?" "I know he was," Marcus whispered. "But I always wondered if he thought I had let her die, or if it was just too much for him." Silence fell again, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Anna reached for Marcus' shoulder. "He didn't blame you. If anything, I think he was looking for something, for someone to help him feel again. Maybe your love was too tied up in pain." Marcus finally looked up at her. "But how did he end up at your wedding?" David nodded slowly. "That's what we've been asking ourselves since that day," Anna added. "It was like he knew exactly where to go. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight down the aisle, sat in front of me, and just looked into my eyes." Marcus stared at Chapel. "My wife loved weddings. She always said the one thing that kept her going through treatment was watching those wedding videos on YouTube. Said it reminded her that love still existed." He shook his head, overcome by the uncanny thought. Is it possible that he went looking for something she loved? Something that reminded him of her? David said softly, "Maybe he never stopped looking. And when he saw a bride again, maybe he just knew. Maybe he felt peace." Tears returned to Marcus' eyes, but this time, they were softer. She always believed animals feel what we don't say. Maybe he carried her love longer than I did. Chapel licked Marcus's cheek gently, as if to say, "It's okay. You did your best." Over the next few hours, they sat on the porch, sipping tea. Chapel lay across Marcus's feet, not moving, like he had finally found his home again. Anna and David listened to story after story, Marcus telling them about how he and his wife had found Charlie outside a fire station during a storm. How he was just a tiny thing then, no bigger than a loaf of bread. How she wrapped him in her scarf and said, "This little guy just saved us from feeling empty." They talked until the sky turned orange, and birds began flying home. Eventually, Marcus looked at the couple. "He found you for a reason. I think maybe you're part of the story now." Anna was taken aback. "You're saying you don't want him back?" Marcus shook his head, this time with a small smile. "I think he came back to say goodbye. He needed closure. We both did. But now, I think he's chosen you." David looked at Chapel, who was staring up at them with calm, knowing eyes. Marcus added, "Let him start over. Not as a stray, not as someone's leftover memory, but as your family." Anna blinked away tears. "Are you sure?" Marcus stood slowly, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You gave him a new chapter. What more could anyone ask for? That night, as they drove home, Chapel curled up in the back seat and slept for the first time in days. Really slept. Anna stared out the window. You think he'll ever forget? David replied. I don't think dogs forget. I think they forgive. And that makes them better than us. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. They didn't need to. When they reached home, Chapel went straight to the living room, circled the soft rug 3 times, and lay down with a soft grunt. His tail thumped once, and just like that, he was home. The days that followed moved slowly, softly, like the pages of a well-worn book being turned with care. Chapel, once astray with tired eyes and hollow ribs, had found a rhythm again. He walked beside Anna in the mornings, sat quietly by David's feet when he read, and curled at the foot of their bed each night. He never asked for attention, but was always near, always watching, always present. His calm became a kind of comfort, like the presence of something unspoken but understood. Neighbors who had once raised eyebrows now leaned over fences to say hello. That dog yours now? One asked. Anna smiled. No, we belonged to him. But there was still one thing that stayed with her. That moment at the altar. She could never forget how still he had stood, how he had looked at her, not like a dog, not like an animal seeking food or warmth, but like something ancient, knowing, like he had seen her soul and placed a piece of someone else's love inside it. She spoke to David about it one night, curled on the couch, Chapel snoring lightly by the fireplace. It was like he chose me, she said quietly. David nodded. I think he saw something in you, something familiar, something safe. Anna looked down at her hands. Or maybe, I reminded him of her. There was a long pause. Then David said something he hadn't before. He helped you that day. You know that, right? She looked up. You were panicking. I saw it. You smiled and held my hand, but your breath was shaky. Your fingers were ice cold. And then he walked in, and everything stopped. Anna felt her throat tighten. He was right. In all the beauty of that day, the violin music, the breeze, the flowers, there had been a storm inside her. She had doubted everything. Not David, never David, but herself, her worth, her place in that moment, the shadow of her own childhood, a father who had walked away, a mother who worked too much and loved too quietly. She had wondered, was she really built for forever? And then, Chapel, looking into his eyes, she felt something settle, like an anchor dropped silently into the sea of her doubt. And in that pause, she chose to believe, in love, in trust, in beginning again. 2 weeks later, they held a small gathering at the town square. It started with just Anna and David, wanting to thank everyone who came to the wedding. But word spread quickly. People brought flowers, food, and folding chairs, and stories, not about Anna or David, but about dogs. A man brought his husky, who had pulled him out of a burning shed. A woman showed pictures of her beagle that stayed by her side during chemo. A boy, no older than 9, clutched a frame of his old Labrador, saying, he waited until I came home from school before he passed. And in the middle of it all, Chapel, he sat near the makeshift stage, tongue out, tail thumping gently whenever someone knelt to pet him. He listened to every story, eyes wide, still, almost as if he understood every word. Someone suggested it should become a yearly tradition, Dog Day at the square. Anna and David loved the idea. And just like that, something broken turned into something beautiful. A few months passed. Fall came. The leaves turned amber and gold, and Chapel took to laying beneath the big tree near their porch. His joints were slower now, steps heavier. He was getting older. Anna and David could feel it. The vet visits increased, and so did their worry. But Chapel never seemed afraid, only tired. Then, one morning, as frost dusted the grass and the world felt especially still, Anna found him lying beneath the tree, his eyes half open, watching the horizon. He didn't move when she called his name. She dropped to her knees, her breath catching. But when she touched him, he turned his head slightly, pressed his nose into her palm, and let out the softest breath. And just like that, he was gone. Grief returned, not loud, not violent, but aching. They buried Chapel under that tree, wrapped in a blanket Anna had knitted last winter, with a collar they had made just a week earlier. The tag read, Chapel, found, loved, forever. The entire town came, even Marcus. He stood quietly, hands folded, a rose in his palm. When it was his turn, he placed a flower beside the grave, whispered something no one else could hear, and walked away with tears sliding silently down his cheeks. Anna cried too, but this time not from regret, not from emptiness, from gratitude, because she had been loved by something that carried the love of another, a thread in a story bigger than she would ever fully understand. Weeks passed, then months, The town's annual dog day at the square became a tradition. A bench was placed near the tree with a brass plate that read, "To the one who walked down the aisle uninvited, but left paw prints on every heart." People still spoke of him, and every once in a while, a stranger would approach Anna and say, "Was it true? Did a stray really walk into your wedding?" And she'd smile softly. He wasn't a stray. He was just returning home. Anna and David would often sit by the tree, their hands entwined, speaking softly to the wind. One night, David brought out an old leather journal. Inside were printed photos of their wedding, of chapel, of the first night they brought him home. Anna turned a page and gasped. There, tucked between two photos, was a note, handwritten by Marcus. It read, "Some dogs are born to chase balls, some to guard homes, but a few rare souls, they carry love from one life to the next. They find the broken and remind them they're still whole." Charlie Chappell was one of them. He didn't just walk into a wedding, he walked into hearts, into healing, into forever. Thank you for giving him his last chapter, Marcus. Anna wiped her eyes and closed the journal, and with a soft breath, she whispered to the stars above, "Thank you for walking in." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that stay with you.